So, a very warm welcome to all of you. So, in today's session, we are going to look at three major areas, that is the meaning, scope, and significance of public administration, the evolution of public administration, and three, Wilson. Okay, so that is going to be our approach while we are dealing with various topics. Now, when it comes to these topics, the modus operandi of the class will be that first I will take up the topic, we'll be discussing some things about them, revising them in a way, and then through the PYQs, we are going to look at the specific questions. So that is going to be our approach. Hi Nikhil. Hello to the friends who are here in the class. And hi Nikhil, how are you? Okay. So that is going to be our approach. So let us start with the very first, that is the meaning of public administration. Now, if you check out the meaning of public administration, there are various scholars that are the part of the debate when it comes to the meaning of public administration. Also, when it comes to public administration, we come across it as a discipline, right? As a profession or a vocation, and as even a process. Okay, or when we look at public administration, we are looking at the affairs of the government. Now, when you look at this aspect of the meaning of public administration, while administration in general is what? A systematized effort, the utilization of men, material, resources, okay, in a systematic manner to realize certain goals. When we are ascribing the word public to the public administration, we find that we are looking at something that is in the public domain, that concerns with the people, and therefore the goals that are attached to it are also the goals of the people, right? So this actually forms us the simplistic understanding of public administration, but the examination is not going to be that simplistic, is it? It cannot be. So what happens is that in the examination, when you look at the meaning, scope, significance, nature, all these things are very interrelated. And there are two pillars that you have to draw. One is the conceptual pillars, and other is the scholarly pillars. So you will find that whenever a question relating to these aspects is put to you in the examination, it is referring to one or more of these pillars, because in the examination they will quote a thinker, one, okay, so either they will quote a scholar, right, and or they will quote a particular view. For example, you would have heard that there are questions that public administration is contextual. Okay, have we heard that question? Have we seen that PYQ, friends? Public administration is contextual. Don't worry, we will be looking at each and every question related to meaning, scope, nature, at least for last few years. I'm not saying that we'll go back in time 30 years and see, but of course the recent trends is something that we'll be seeing. So have you heard that? Yes or no? Public administration is contextual. Yes or no? Till you don't respond, the class won't go forward. So whenever you are looking at the word contextual, that means it is something that is related to a backdrop, that is responding to a backdrop. So at the heart of it will come a conceptual element, that is ecology, the ecological view of public administration, right? See, there is no point in me giving the definition of every scholar and actually, just explaining, just like one does in a foundation class. Okay. The idea here is to cover maximum ground in the least possible time. So our focus appropriately is linked to that idea. So there, like I said, it is referring to the ecological. When we look at public administration as an instrument in the hands of state, then we are looking at what? We are looking at a instrumentalist view, right? Public administration as a tool, as a mechanism. Again, the basics remains the same: systematization and utilization of certain resources to achieve certain aims, goals, objectives, right? So to that end, we need to examine that which particular area we are targeting, right? At the same time, you will find that there can be, because these views are not in air, okay? These are the views which have been framed by the scholars alone. It is some scholarly development that has framed it. So if Waldo says that it is the what and how of government, while we are looking at Waldo, yes, Waldo you study as part of the NPA, okay, to begin with, right? But when you look at the view, what and how of the government, that means structural functional. One, structural and functional. How? What would also entail that what to do, demarcation of goals, decision making. At the same time, how would make the manner, which resources are to be utilized, so on and so forth. Okay, understood this aspect? First tell me how you need to interpret the question, because unless you anchor the question on a set of concepts or a concept, whatever may be the case, and you have the scholar related to it, you really cannot write an answer. Okay, so that is the most fundamental aspect, which now we are talking in the limited scope of the topic of today, or topic that we are dealing today. But that is true for the entire subject. Even if you are writing or you are attempting a question of paper 2, you immediately need to pin it up or try and anchor it with some set of concepts in paper 2 as well as from where it is getting echoed in paper 1. Only then you will be able to make the interlinkages. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to make those interlinkages. Got it? Understood? Got it, friends? Yes or no? All right. So now let us precisely look at the various aspects of the meaning of public administration. The meaning of public administration. Now, if you see the word administrate, etc., etc., but where it is flowing from? It is flowing from the basic idea that administration is something that is intrinsic to the society. Okay, that is intrinsic to the human body and human being. Let me give you an example. There is this body. Okay, the body has brain, heart, lungs, kidney, liver, organs, limbs. Okay, now what it is doing, it is working in a concert or in a systematized manner, utilizing some resources and making you functional, making you attain certain goals, right? Whether it is a family, in a family there are people, okay, parents, children, grandparents, and all of them make that family as an entity function. All of them perform different functions. All of them have a budget. Okay, all of them have certain activities to perform. So when you look at the public administration, similarly you will have to keep this reality in mind, the basic reality, and over that the various views of the scholars, over that various views of the scholars. For example, Simon says, now that is where the confusion will come in. Okay, suppose the question is quoting Simon, and Simon says that administration can be defined as the activities of groups cooperating to accomplish common goals. Activities of groups cooperating to achieve common goals. Now, if a question comes like this, and the question is not quoting Simon. Okay, the question says that public administration or the administration can be defined as the activities of groups cooperating to accomplish the common goals. Comment. Very fine. But the moment that quote is hyphenated with Simon, immediately your brain will move towards decision making, which is not an incorrect response, but in this situation, it will make your answer incorrect. Okay. So these are the traps that you should be wary of. Like I was giving earlier the example that it will be based on a view, on a particular conceptual orientation, or and can be on a scholar. So in that sense, if you will see, here the moment Simon comes into the picture, your view can get disoriented. Your view can get disoriented. So you need to avoid. All right. Understood this limited point when I say that it can be based on a particular scholar and a concept, and I try to give you certain examples as well. Understood that? Yes or no? Yes. Hanji. Understood? Okay. So there are going to be various views. Now, there are another set of views that comes with the scope. I'm just laying the context here, okay? Scope, what does it entail? And you see, here you will have to link with the evolution as well, because if you will see the evolution, the scope has been expanding. If we move to from SMT, CMT era to the NPA, okay, behavioralism, participation, and all those schools, social psychological school, and towards the present good governance era, the scope is expanding. Earlier, public administration was considered a limited discipline. So there are narrow views and then there are broad views. Similarly, those views are aligned with the scholars. There is a legalistic view. So for example, when Wilson says that public administration, or he views public administration as a detailed and systematic application of law. So we are looking at a legalistic view. We are looking at a legalistic view, right? Also, when Gulick says that public administration is that part of science of administration which has to do with government and thus concerns itself primarily with the executive branch, where the work of the government is done, though there are obviously problems and also in connection with the legislative and judicial branches. So in that sense, if you will see, it is primarily viewing public administration in the realm of government, but the present era is distinguishing it. The present era is distinguishing it. It is not keeping it just within the government. The scope has widened. Waldo says that public administration is the art and science of management as applied to the affairs of the state. As applied to the affairs of the state. So, when you are looking at this particular aspect, the game changes. It is more in line with the Gulick's view. Okay, it is more in line with the Gulick's view. So, in this manner, you will have to find the similarities and differences. Okay, you will have to find the similarities and differences. So, moving forward, let us have a deep dive into the meaning of public administration. The meaning of public administration. Whenever we look at public administration, we are looking at certain characteristics. First, it is related to public affairs. Second, it is rule oriented. Okay, it is related to public affairs, it is rule oriented, it is a group idea. It is not related to just one person. It is a group idea. You are catering a vast majority or vast number of groups. Also, it has a institutional angle. You have the institutions, executive, legislature, judiciary, right? So it has that institutional angle. Also, because it is public, you are dealing with citizen and state linkage. It is not just state, it is not just citizen. It is the linkage. And when it is administration, it is organized, right? It is organized, it has certain goals. So there is a goal orientation. There is a goal orientation. Okay? Understood? That means we can say the management of the collective affairs of the society through rules, because group is the society and institutions, right? That is the most simplistic understanding if we can derive it, right? That is the most simple way we can deduce through this. So these are the buzzwords that you should, remember. These are the words that you should remember. Okay. Next comes further into this. Now, if you look at public administration, it has a dual characteristic. What is that dual characteristic? It is, to begin with, obviously we identify activity, profession, discipline, process, etc. But it is a practice as well as a field of study. That means a discipline. That means a discipline. So whenever we are looking at practice, we are looking at the machinery. What is that machinery? Bureaucracy or the civil service. Bureaucracy or the civil service. Okay? And discipline would mean that it has certain principles. It has certain principles. Okay? So that is the idea of the basic in terms of how we end up deriving the meaning of public administration. Okay? Understood this much? Tell me, understood this much? Okay. Now, how it has been viewed. So let us move in a chronology, okay? Classical views. If you see the classical views, the very first who gave the identity is Wilson himself. Okay? The execution of the public policy by civil servants. Okay? Systematic execution of law. Systematic execution of law. So, Wilson actually put out administration away from politics, provided it a specialized character. Provided it a specialized character. Understood this much? Okay. Then LD White. White also echoes similar views. Execution of public policy. And it is White who is looking or focusing at the execution. That means providing a managerial color to the public administration. Gulick, as you know, Gulick and Ervik, they look at it as post-decord. The post-decord view. Okay, planning, organizing, staffing, so on and so forth. So that is the kind of view he is taking. Okay. Now, if you look at this, this forms the classical view which keeps the administration limited and in close proximity to the state, but as a specialized area. Right? As a specialized area, differentiating from the state as a more specialized field, as a more specialized field. But when we see the scope expanding, right, after classical comes somewhat modern views. Okay, views like Waldo, for example. Okay, I'm not getting into every scholar because otherwise we'll end up discussing just the scholars only. Okay, so that is not the idea here. So look at how Waldo is looking at. Remember, Waldo is whom? NPA. So do remember their identity. Okay, it is saying that it is value laden as opposed to the classical view. Classical view said value neutral. It is an instrument. Okay, so Waldo is saying that it is value laden. It is value laden and not just technical as the classical says. And it reflects the democratic ideals. It reflects the democratic ideals. All right. Similarly, the ideas of modern scholars, for example, Nicholas Henry, he provides a synthesis. While not completely dismissing the classicals, he says that public administration is the implementation of public policy. That is fine. It is the implementation of public policy by civil servants within a political environment. Within a political environment. So, what is this political environment bringing to the table? It is bringing the same, the value laden characteristics and the democratic ideals. And the democratic ideals. Okay. So that is one way to look at this. Now, there are extreme broad views, the broad interpretation. For example, by Willoughby. Willoughby says that public administration is concerned with what and how of kind of government. Okay, it is concerned with every aspect of the government. Okay. At the same time, if you look at it as activity, if you look at it as activity, it consists of what? A coordination, a collaboration, a collectivization in decision making, in utilization of resources, etc. Okay. So this kind of view will focus on what? What administration does. What administration does. More on the functioning side. More on the functioning side. People, or the view which is looking at it from an institutional lens, who is concerning with the institutions, it will say that these are institutions embedded in the edifice of the state. So there are institutions which are embedded in the state, and public administration is about them. Okay. Whereas the process view will look at as what? As series of decisions. As series of decisions. Okay. A series of decision, a dynamic process. Something which is a process. There is a learning that goes on. Feedback and learn. Okay. Whereas a normative angle, as the word suggests, norm. So that norm will be based on what? It will be based on values. It will be based on certain values. Justice, equity, fraternity, so on and so forth. Okay? Understood? Understood this much? Hanji? Understood? Alright. Now, obviously, administration is there. So now what distinguishes the public administration with the private administration? If you look at the purpose, the very purpose, the purpose of public administration is to deliver certain goods and services. Is to deliver certain goods and services. Okay? It is to deliver certain goods and services, whereas in private the idea is simply, so when you label it and when you judge at the altar of efficiency and effectiveness, because every thinker, every scholar is looking at efficiency and effectiveness. So here the effectiveness, what will be the yardstick? The better delivery of goods and services, the public welfare. Whereas here would be the profit efficiency. In public administration, the accountability is democratic. It flows through the people. Whereas in private administration, the accountability flows from the objective of the organization. Public administration is highly procedural, rule bound, we have seen. Whereas the private administration is highly flexible. The public administration has broader stakeholdership. Private administration has narrower stakeholdership. Okay. So, if you synthesize the meaning today in the context of India, it is what? It is public administration is an instrument for development, for democratic spirit, for building a nation. Okay? Understood? Understood this? All right. Now, further dwelling upon the meaning, PABAD as activity. PABAD as activity. Now, if you dismantle what all administration does, it executes policy, implementation, the policy implementation. It delivers services, so service delivery, right? It exercises regulation and control. When I say executes policy, that includes law as well. Okay, so I'm therefore not separating the law, and at the same time ensure the welfare. Ensure the welfare. Okay, so public administration does all these things simplistically. Okay, of course, aid and advise and carry out development and all those things are there, but at a broad level, it does this as an activity. Okay, understood? So that is pretty much with regards to the meaning of public administration. Okay, so you can make certain pointers. I'm telling you that. Okay, broadly, a field of practice and study. It involves decision making, implementation, regulation, service delivery. In light of certain values, efficiency, effectiveness, equity, responsiveness, accountability. Okay. Now, let us look at the approaches, the various approaches to public administration, because questions often use these approaches. Okay. So, when we talk about the various approaches, we'll have to remember that we need to link these approaches with the broader aspects of administration. We cannot be simply memorizing them. All right. So that is something that is indispensable in this. So the very basic idea that we associate with public administration is the classical idea. And this classical idea can be seen in twofold. That is from a managerial lens, that boils down to the post-decor approach, and then from a legal lens, because that is the classical view of public administration. Okay, I'm not getting into, if somebody has a doubt they can ask, because I'm not getting into the very details, because we have discussed post decor with Gulick and Arvik and the legalistic approach as well. Okay, now if you see the next one, that is the political approach. That is the political approach. That means it associates public administration with politics. That means that there are certain values which are related to it. There are certain values which are related to it. So, administration comes across as an extension of the politics. Administration comes across as an extension of the politics. Then the human behavior approach. So whenever we talk about human behavior approach, we are looking at a individual or a group behavior. Individual or a group behavior. So whether you look at Simon, Bernard, human relation theorists, okay, the idea of participative management, all of it will come here. All of it will come here. Next is the ecological approach. I gave the example of ecology just a while ago. And with the ecological approach, that means it impacts the environment and in turn gets impacted by the environment, whether that is social, cultural, political, economic. If you see rigs build the entire CPA out of this only. Another approach is to look at it from the lens of development, the developmental approach. Okay, which looks administration as an agent of change, which looks administration as an agent of change. So whether you are looking at planning in paper 2, development administration in paper 1, the rural and urban development in paper 2, all of these will come here. Okay. Next is the public policy approach. That the administration should be concerned with the policy. Administration should be concerned with the policy at all levels. So whether it is in the formulation or in the implementation, in the monitoring or the review or in the evaluation. Okay. Then there is an NPM approach which talks about certain ideas, that is decentralization. performance, efficiency, the use of private sector management principles in the public sector. So isn't it something, if we look at a deeper level, NPM is echoing rather what Wilson said, minus dichotomy. Okay, so there is an overlapping, there is an overlapping. So all these approaches are used to a great extent, right? All these approaches are very relevant. Okay, so each of them have a different focus. If you look at managerial, the focus will be efficiency and performance. Okay, legal will have focus on rules, rule of law. Okay, the welfare orientation will be focusing more on the values, the political orientation, the welfare aspect, justice, etc. Right? Understood this? Understood? Yes or no? Hanji, understood this aspect? And similar will be the views. When we talk about the various view, the ecological view, process view, subject matter view, political view, legal view, managerial view, ecological view, behavioral view, institutional view, Marxist view. All right. Now, in this light, if you will see, the public administration, we have understood the meaning of public administration. Now, let us look at the meaning and basically the nature, the discipline, activity, profession related to the government. Okay. Now, let us look at the scope. Let us look at the scope. Now, there are two sort of broad views related to. Again, that will flow from the view. One is the integral view. The integral view will say that all branches, all activities, legislative, executive, judicial, that are related to the public affairs will be there. So it in a way encapsulates even the post-decor view. Okay? But the managerial view, the managerial view would have a narrow focus on the affairs of the management, on the internal working of the executive. Okay? Otherwise, if we look at and relate the scope and significance, then we can see various factors. Again, that is related to the meaning. Factors like policy functions, okay, formulation, implementation, service delivery, development, service delivery, development, regulation, welfare, empowerment, law and order, crisis management. Okay, so this will come as the functional scope. This will come as a functional scope. Okay, but on the contrary, when we look at it from the field of study or the disciplinary scope, we'll have to look at the political dimensions, legal dimensions, okay, managerial, social and developmental dimensions, ethical dimension. And when you put this in context, the study and the practice, the study and the practice, so as the complexity of the society goes on increasing, as the number of functions of the public administration goes on increasing. So earlier, while the state had limited functions, the public administration was also limited in its scope. But now, if you look how the scope has expanded, whether that is terrorism, okay, regulation of the larger society as part of the governance, good governance spirit, rights based approaches, okay. So this scope has evolved from classical to the present era. See how it has evolved. If you look at the classical phase, okay, first let me list down the phases. Classical, then immediately after post World War II, because Marshall Plan and other things came up. Then the NPA, NPM, and the post NPM governance, good governance, or the present era. Here, the scope is focused on hierarchy, post-decor features. Okay, it has a Weberian structure. Whereas during World War or after World War II, it is more orienting towards behavioral aspects. Behavioral aspects, human relations. Remember, it is retaining what was there but expanding. So these are the additions that are happening. NPA focused on values, equity, social equity, and all those things, responsiveness. Whereas NPM focused on decentralization, efficiency, result orientation. And if you look at the present era, it is about networks, participation. So while the traditional scope emphasized only on the structure, control, functions, the scope that we have today goes beyond that. It looks at values, service delivery, democracy. That is why we say that the scope of public administration is ever expanding. Now, obviously, you can superimpose the challenges, how it has evolved. Okay, and this challenge and evolution reinforces the ecological view kind of idea. The ecological view kind of idea. Okay. So now if you can list in points the significance after this learning, the significance of public administration, because we can only come to significance once we know the meaning and scope. Okay. So it helps in certain key aspects. It's a tool for governance. It's a tool for governance. It is, it plays a significant role with regards to policy. With regards to policy. It is a sort of a device which brings about development, socio-economic development, public service delivery. Okay? It brings about accountability and transparency. It brings about accountability and transparency. Crisis management. Now see, interestingly, if you will see the headings of some of the ARC reports, second ARC reports, you will find them on these lines. It acts as a symbol of stability in dynamic political environment. Symbol of stability and dynamic political environment. It acts as a facilitator for participation. Link democracy here. Link democracy here. Okay? Understood? So, this is the idea on the meaning, scope, and significance of public administration. Okay? Meaning, scope, and significance of public administration. Understood? Hanji, yes or no? Nikhil, friends here? Hmm. All right. Now, let us look at the PYQs from this particular section. Okay. Let me just pull those PYQs. So, I'm taking some 4 or 5 PYQs from this. This question was asked in 2016 and was a 10 marker. Okay. Meaning, scope, and significance of public administration. It says public administration is the translation of politics into reality that citizens see every day, and it attributes this to two scholars, Donald F. Kettle and James W. Fessler. And James W. Fessler. Now tell me what all will go into this question. You have 2 minutes. Just the ideas. I'll repeat the question. Public administration is the translation of politics into reality that citizens see every day. That citizens see every day. Citizens see every day. Nikhil, when you say that the implementation of service delivery, etc., as an institution, it is also an embodiment of the democratic will. It is not just like you say the objectives set by the political masters. Yes, institutions does regulate the goals. They do carry out the decision making, but it is not to be seen as something that only serves the political masters. Ultimately, it is the society, the very first breakdown that I made, the interest of the groups and the society. Understood that? What all will go into this answer here? Come on, tell me. Are set by the politics only. See, there are people, okay? They elect a government to serve them. Now, who is setting the broader agenda? Who is coming to the government? Those have been elected by the people. Now, government or state, if you look at, it is a political entity. Whenever we are looking at a political entity, we are looking at competing interest, competing demands. And politics does nothing but harmonizes those competing interests and competing demands. So that is politics for you. So who is setting the objectives? It is the politics and by extension the people in a democracy, of course. Okay, we are not talking about the regimes of Kim Jong-un and others for that matter. So the legitimacy, how those goals, understand this, the public administration will serve public goals. If public does not identify with those goals aren't public. Got this? All right. Now tell me what you will write in the answer in the question that I just flagged. Is the translation of politics into reality that citizens see every day. That citizens see every day. You see, if you look at the public administration, the policy view, okay, because the public administration comes across as a mechanism through which the political decisions get translated into policies and actions that ultimately resonate with the citizens or impact their lives. Okay. So, in this particular question, you will have to make the hybrid of the of the policy and the politics view and the instrumentalist view of public administration, because it is something that is being perceived, felt by the people. So, politics related to policy formulation and administration related to implementation, along with the modern approach that the citizen is at the center, because the question says that the citizens perceive every day. Okay. So here you will have to link or put public administration as a bridge between the state and the society. Between the state and the society. All right. Understood this one? Okay. Let us take up another question. All right. Another question. The scope, and this question was asked in 2018. Okay, 18, again a 10 mark. The scope of the discipline of public administration is determined by what an administrative system does. And does it mean that the scope of the discipline is boundaryless? So the classical debate whether the scope is boundaryless. No, it is not boundaryless. It has a fixed core with vacillating periphery. That is what we learn. So these arguments have to be there. But when you are looking at what it does, the functional view has to be taken. The functional view has to be taken. What an administrative system does. What an administrative system does. Okay. Understood this? Fairly easy one, this one. Okay, so you have identified this as the functional view. But at the same time, you will have to say that it is not boundaryless. Right. So, if you see the fine print of the question, it says that the scope of the discipline is what an administrative system does. So, that is where the argument of as service delivery, as those things that we wrote, okay, those will stand as the manifestations of the conceptual functional view. Quote, functional views follows. Then when it says it is boundaryless, no, it has a fixed core, but with vacillating periphery. That the core functions remains the same, but the changing demands, the changing needs of the society. So here you can also use, if you want to emphasize on the boundaryless aspect and arrest that it is not something that is undefined. No, it is very well defined, but it keeps on changing. You can use also the ecological. Okay, understood? Right. Next, I will take up two questions together. Okay. The first question was asked in 2019. Public administration is constantly being reinvented because it is contextual. Because it is contextual. Something that I alluded to. So the same idea of the reinvention of both the meaning, scope, both has to be used in the light of the ecological view, because we are looking at a contextual characteristics. Okay. Now, this is as a whole public administration as an idea. Next question, which was asked fairly recently in 2024, says that the study of public administration must include its ecology. Must include its ecology, because without ecology it will become irrelevant. That is the first point. But the core ideas remain the same. The ecological view. Let me tell you, ecological view is one of the most important aspects of all the views, and of course the structural function. So these two views are at the top of the agenda when it comes to coming into the questions in the examination. Okay, understood? So fairly easy question that is there. One more question, that is that this was asked in 2020. The strength of public administration is in its exploration of complexes and nuances of public policy. Making and implementation. So two things, integral view and the public policy view. Just these things. Because the strength would mean relevance, significance here. You will have to relate, because the UPSC will do word play. Okay. So the strength would mean the relevance or the significance part. That it is relevant, it is significant only because it explores the complexities and nuances of public policy making and implementation. All right, understood this? Okay. So now we have understood this. Next, we will see the evolution and the Wilson part. And mind you, all of you have a worksheet attached. Do you all have the worksheet? Yes or no? Do you all have the worksheet? Tell me. For friends who are watching this online, the worksheet will be in the e-material section. Do you have the worksheet? So you all are expected to work on that worksheet and discuss it with me in the mentorship sessions if you face any concerns. Those worksheets are for you only. Okay, so I'll check that out. You'll get the worksheet, so you can discuss those worksheets with me in the mentorship sessions. But I'll check where is the worksheet and why it has not been uploaded. I'll clarify it from the team. Okay. So next we shall move towards evolution. In this, we'll be looking at, and I'm just giving a heads up, two prominent scholars, that is Gulimbivisky and Nicholas Henry. Apart from the usual stuff, the CMT, SMT, and all those things. All right. So we'll be looking at those scholars, but that will happen after a short break. So this was the major chunk, meaning, scope, significance. Rest, when we look at Wilson is just one scholar. So that will do. Okay. So a quick break. All right. Let's go through the evolution. And in evolution, like I said, there are two scholars, that is Henry and Golembowski, that we need to be aware of. Now, if you will see the evolution in general, we can broadly see certain stages of evolution. Okay, one is the conventional way of looking at it, that is the classical way in terms of the developments that have happened from the classical era to the present times, and this is what Wildavsky is, Golembowski is looking at. So he says that there was this classical period. In this classical period, you had scholars like the very own Wilson, okay, and with every period, the Golembowski defines a locus and the focus. Locus and the focus. So, in that sense, if you will see, the classical period focused on the principles, and this is, we are talking about the Golembowski. Okay, it was about administrative principles, efficiency, hierarchy, and it is said to be the era of the dichotomy. It is said to be the era of dichotomy. All right. So in this era, if you see, the institutions and the bureaucracies were the primarily idea, the state institutions and the bureaucracy were the primary locus where the public administration got situated. Where the public administration got situated. And the focus was on principles of management. Principles of management, emphasizing upon hierarchy, efficiency, effectiveness, and this was characteristic of mechanistic ideas. Okay. Next era which Golembowski talks about is the principles of administration era. Principles of administration era from 1927 till about 1940, if I say so. And the idea was universalization, universal principles of administration. Okay, so ideas like post decor, dominated the point of view, or even the POCCC, they dominated the point of view. Okay, so again here the focus becomes the bureaucracy away from the state. The institutional aspect became the focus. The institutional aspect became the focus. Okay, more focus on the processes because we are talking about universalization. Okay, universal principle, the era of the so-called one best way, that this is the best way and this is universal and we can implement it at all the places. Okay, then comes the era of challenge, that is the era of challenge. Here, those very principles that were considered universal, they were being critiqued. And the human side of administration started appearing. The human side of administration started appearing. So the mechanistic rationality gets challenged by people like Simon. By people like Simon. Okay. So the locus remains the governmental structure, institutions, bureaucracy, decision making environment. But and the focus got shifted from rigid principles to understanding the complexity. From rigid principles to understanding the complexity, because a human orientation came about. All right. Then comes the fourth era. Then comes the fourth era, which is basically talking about the identity crisis. What is public administration? Is it related to other disciplines? Is it political science? Okay. So, the early administrative theories that got defined because they got challenged in the era of crisis. So, this led to the precipitation of an identity crisis. And there was a return to the political science. There was a return to the political science. All right. And a sort of intellectual understanding of executive. Okay. So, democratic accountability, institutional analysis, and in this era emerges scholars like Waldo, Dahl, Robert Dahl, Dwight Waldo, okay, and more and more emphasis on the political behavior, the democratic accountability angle, because it is now was being seen in relation to the political science. And then comes the era which Golumbowski says that emerges after it, that is the fifth era, which is related to NPM, that is new public management and beyond. New public management and beyond. So expanding the scope, not just limiting to the government but also outsiders, that is the organizations non-governmental organizations, okay, non-governmental organizations, businesses, and institutions like that. So the focus came on managerial efficiency, performance measurement, result orientation, and the private sector practices, incorporating them into the affairs of the public administration, into the affairs of the public administration. All right. So this was the view of Golumbowski. Now let us have a view of Henry, who also talks about the paradigmical development of public administration. Okay. He also talks about the same idea of dichotomy, the same idea of dichotomy, the principles, public administration as political science, and the public administration as management. Okay. So Nicholas Henry also takes a leaf out of Golembowski and presents you with an analysis of the evolution and presents you with an analysis of the evolution, and that comes as a final terminal towards the recent trends when we see the postmodern paradigms, the idea of governance, good governance reaching a level of maturity, okay, reaching a level of maturity. So that is where Henry comes in. So you can allude to one or both of these scholars while handling the questions on the evolution of the discipline. But when you handle the questions, be very vigilant that the basic flow from the SMT to CMT and to the human relations school to the behavioral school to NPA to NPM and to the present remains in line, supported by the respective scholars from the administrative thought, supported by the respective scholars from the administrative thought. Okay, so that is the basic crux of the evolution. That is the basic crux of the evolution. Now, let us have a look at few questions related to the evolution of the discipline. So this question was asked in 2017 and it was a 20 marker. With every major transformation in the applied world of public administration. So when it says applied world, that means we are looking at the practice and not just the discipline. In the applied world of public administration, the study of public administration has grown in scope and density. That means the practice influencing the percept, the practice influencing the theory. Okay. So the subject matter remains the same. In the subject matter, you will have to talk about the evolution, the paradigmical development of public administration. But what is the cue? The practice influencing the percept, because the question is saying that with every major transformation in the applied world of public administration, the study of public administration has grown in scope and in intensity. So that means we are talking about expanding scope and intensity. Okay. Discuss the relationship between evolution of the discipline and the profession of administration. Okay. So how it has impacted, basically you have to plot the very same paradigms and its impact on the practice and how practice shapes the paradigms. How practice shapes the paradigms. All right. So, a simple, straightforward question. Have you understood this? Are there any queries? Any queries? Here? Any queries? Any queries? Yes or no? No? Okay. Now let us have a look at another question. And this was asked in 2019. It was a 10 marker, okay? So a shorter one. If there is ever to be a science of public administration, it must derive from an understanding of man's behavior. It must derive from an understanding of man's behavior. So, and it is looking at science of administration as an idea. So, it is a critique of the scientific idea, that the scientific idea or the extreme classical idea was not good enough. So it is flowing from that. Okay. So in the previous question, we were looking at the full spectrum of the evolution. In this question, we are looking at a micro reality of that evolution, that whatever science was being postulated as part of the science of administration, that is not good enough. It has to flow from the man's behavior. Okay, explain. 10 markers, so we'll have to talk about, to begin with, that public administration as a discipline remains only relevant if it responds to the demands of the society. The classical universalistic orientations of public administration were merely directed towards finding one best way through scientific methods, but that was not good enough. Therefore, public administration had to evolve, keeping in mind the human behavior aspect. So, where have we studied the human behavior aspect? Hanji, where? Hanji, tell me, where have we studied the human behavior aspect? It is the challenge to the principle, the identity crisis. So that area has to be focused. That area has to be focused. All right. So that is from where the question is flowing. So we are limited to the third paradigm here, right? And through that we'll link the NPA and other aspects here. Okay. Let us look at one more question. Now, this question is interesting, again focusing on the full spectrum of the evolution, 20 markers. So whenever there will be a full spectrum of the evolution, because of the gigantic nature of the topic, it will be largely 15 marker or 20 marker. So this question was asked in 2020, a 20 marker. The question says, the movement towards governance as an organizing concept of public administration and management. The movement towards governance, that is the present, that is the present era, okay, is because the focus of the administration has been shifting from the bureaucratic state focus of the administration. has been shifting from bureaucratic state, paradigm 1, okay, to the hollow state and third party government. To the hollow state and third party government. Critically examine. Now, this question is a bit complex. Complex in the sense, while the content part remains the evolution, we'll have to build upon that evolution. Okay, as an organizing concept. So first of all, it says the movement of the governance is because of the focus of administration has been shifting. So we have to show the focus, shifting focus. Who adopts the locus focus approach? Golembevsky. Okay. And we have to examine this critically. That means the very critique of the of the idea of governance, in the sense that isn't it absolving the state from its responsibility, the primary contract, the social contract between the society and the state being a mechanism, an institution erected to serve the interest of the society, and the state no more alone does it, it does it with civil society and market or businesses, right? So in that sense, we will have to take up this question, that while we will show that the focus has been shifting, the movement has shifted, that earlier we were looking at only the state, with the state certain values, okay, but now we are looking at even more actors, so that is flowing from the evolution. So here the focus approach of Golembevsky will come handy, right? And it is giving characteristics of this kind of a state, a hollow or third party government. But we'll have to critically examine this. We'll have to give limitations. Okay. So it is a kind of a question which is using evolution as a context setting vehicle for you. All right. And then on that, you will have to critique or highlight the limitations of the governance. So this is how certain interdisciplinary questions can be framed. Let us look at another question. So this question was a 15 marker asked in 2021. Public administration has been viewed as a socially embedded process of collective relationship, dialogue and action. Examine the statement in the light of the consensus achieved in the third Minnowbrook conference. So you are aware that Minnowbrook conferences are closely aligned with the paradigmical development of public administration. So whenever we are looking at the Minnowbrook conferences, for example, the first one was by Waldo, right, and it unsettled a lot of things. And then subsequently, so we are looking at just the corollary of the previous question, because third Minnowbrook conference reinforces the idea of the network governance and all those things. So it is talking about a socially embedded process of collective relationship, dialogue and action. Okay, so that was the consensus achieved. So we are again looking at a micro reality of the third Minnowbrook conference, but to prove this micro reality, we will have to take the vehicle of the evolution. So earlier we were looking at how it reached governance and criticizing it in terms of the limitations. Here we just have to stop at how it reached. Okay. Next one, again a similar question on MBC 3 2023. It was asked, it was a 15 marker again. Minobrook 3 emphasized the importance of empirical research in generating valuable insights for public administration. So all your evidence-based policy making, data-driven decision making, etc. And recognize the need to tailor education in the field to different regional context. So this MBC 3 is being talked about. Okay, empirical research, emphasis on empirical research. Now the idea is why emphasis on empirical research. There must be reasons. So why will form the part of the evolution, why we are talking about these things. Okay, similar to the previous question. And the need to tailor education in the field to different regional context. So take a leaf from new CPA. Whereas the earlier CPA, the original CPA, the OG CPA was about the ethnocentrism of the West or the developed towards the East or the developing countries. New CPA encounters, or rather not encounters, factors the regional diversity, the regional contextuality, that there is no one way or ethnocentric way or Western led way. There can be more ways. And therefore, it is looking at evidences and all those things in those regional contexts. In those regional contexts. Okay. So this is what you need to actually factor in in this particular question. Right? Last one from this, which I am taking up, it was 2023, 10 marks. Okay. Public administration's horizons have been expanding to cater to the complex needs of the citizens in the globalized era. So it is talking about the expanding horizons of public administration as per the needs of citizens in the globalized era. So you will be using the learning on the impact of globalization. But how will you show the expansion? You will show the expansion through locus and focus approach of Golembevsky. Right? How the locus and focus have been expanding. So what you can do is you can draw a line. I'm just giving you a methodology. Okay, you can plot the paradigms, identify the locus focus and see how it is expanding, right? And the factors and the influences that are taking shape. So always use the evolution idea as a vehicle to prove a point. Okay, so that will serve you in a better manner, right? So that is pretty much for the evolution. Now let us look at Wilson. Let us look at Wilson. So you are all aware that Wilson, through his essay in 1887, The Study of Administration, is considered as the beginning of the public administration's identity as a discipline. But why did he said so? Remember, the reality with which Wilson is reflecting is as per the context then. Okay, while certain principles may have endured, okay, but the realities have changed. So the enduring of those principles has to be seen in their changing manifestations, right? So of course there was corruption in the American system because of the spoil system, and Wilson was very impressed with the European model that was functioning, especially in countries like France, Germany, etc., wherein he thought that a systemic overhaul is necessary. And therefore, he talks about certain core ideas, the very prominent being the politics administration dichotomy. Why am I saying this? Because this gets reflected in a lot of PYQs. This gets asked by UPSC a lot. Okay. He says that there should be a science of administration. There should be a comparative orientation because he was comparing with Europe. He was comparing with Europe. And there should be a focus on business-like approach. That means some sort of an efficiency. But this efficiency is not just a mechanical efficiency of realizing the goals. Because what are the goals? The goals are public goals. The goals are public goals. So, Wilson's idea is not a value-free idea. Because the values that Wilson cherishes in his ideas are the values of democracy, values of constitution, the public service values, the public service values. And therefore, he talks about that there should be a rule of law, there should be a meritocracy amongst the civil services. There should be a meritocracy amongst the civil services. And to that end, we'll have to condition Wilson not just based on the pillars that Wilson gives, but also in the backdrop in which Wilson is giving us these pillars, in which Wilson is giving us these pillars. Okay? Understood this much? So when he talks about administration as a science, Wilson was basically critiquing the working of the administration then. Okay? So Wilson said that what is good and what is not good, there is no criteria. There is no criteria. And therefore, he advocated for science. Because you see, Europe, France, Germany became the cradle where some scientific ideas were coming up. Okay? So the idea was to save the administration from the strife of politics. Remember, this is not to suggest that he did not wanted a democratic accountability or a democratic setup. But the idea is that it should be saved from the strife of politics. Because politics muddies the waters. It does not let the logic prevail at times. Okay? So that was the core idea when he talks about that they should be separated so that the administration could work on certain principles. Administration could work on certain principles. At the same time, when he looks at the politics administration dichotomy, he is actually viewing the idea that the politics is held because politics is the embodiment of the popular will. Therefore, it holds the administration hostage. Therefore, he said that the politics and administration should be separated. They should have separate spheres. Okay, politics for providing the direction and administration for implementing it. And from the scientific nature, the strife, the scientific nature emerges the dichotomy, and from dichotomy emerges the business-like orientation, which is talking about efficiency and effectiveness free from political interference. Free from political interference. Okay? Because politics involves conflict, competition, whereas administration to be efficient needs to be neutral, technical, merit based. Okay? And he believed that this separation between the politics and the administration would bring about greater efficiency, effectiveness, objectivity, and accountability in the administration. And accountability in the administration. Okay? Understood? Right? So that is at the core of Wilson's philosophy, including the rule of law, meritocracy, etc., to create efficient, neutral, professional administration with public accountability. Yes, Wilson has been criticized on many accounts when the dichotomy debate actually gets challenged, and it says that it is impossible to separate politics and administration. Okay, scholars like Waldo have criticized Wilson that he ignores the ethical dimensions. Scholars like Paul Appleby talks about how politics and administration cannot be completely separated because policy making requires inputs from the administration. While Wilson gets obsessed with efficiency and effectiveness, this obsession again neglects the human and the social dimensions, right? And the Wilsonian vision suffers from the Eurocentrism. It might not be very practical in the culturally, socially, economically different environment. Okay, but we have seen that the politics administration dichotomy has evolved while fusion is the norm, but dichotomy has not been evaded. Dichotomy has not diluted. Okay, there are certain characteristics in the administration that continues to resonate that dichotomy, whether we talk about the neutrality, professionalism, okay, being responsive, all those areas continue to remain. All those areas continue to remain. And interestingly, this dichotomy debate you can juxtapose with the evolution. You can juxtapose with the evolution. So, if I label here as paradigms, okay. So, this was an era where dichotomy was the buzzword, it was the favorite. Okay. The second era again continued with it when it comes to emphasis on value-free scientific orientation. Okay. It is this era, third era, where dichotomy started getting questioned. Where dichotomy started getting questioned. And the ideals of behavioralism and Simon's bounded rationality further cemented this questioning, and the era of fusion begins. And the era of fusion begins, which reaches further crescendo as part of NPM, etc. in the forward times, in the times ahead. Okay. So while in the present times, the advocacy of dichotomy to an extent of professionalism, neutrality, impartiality, accountability remains. But it is not a watertight separation that the administration should not deal with policy questions. That the administration should not deal with policy questions. It is not the case. Okay. So whenever you are looking at the citizen centricity in present times, right? The way the state, market, civil society collaborate to bring about public goods, you cannot separate or you cannot endorse political administration dichotomy. But the way the tasks are executed in that sphere, dichotomy continues to remain a cherished idea. Dichotomy continues to remain a cherished idea. And therefore, the dichotomy continues to live on. The dichotomy continues to live on, and the relevance of Wilson continues to live on, not just in the dichotomy, but the business-like approach in NPM, but the continued emphasis on scientific character. Remember, nobody talked about that we should not be scientific. Even the evolution adds layers over that scienticism, tempers it, prunes it, that it cannot be absolute scienticism. It has to factor in certain realities. It has to factor in certain realities. Okay, so that shows that how Wilson continues to remain relevant. How Wilson continues to remain relevant. So this was about Wilson dichotomy, scienticism, and the core ideas. Now, let us have a look at certain PYQs from this. Okay. So this question was asked in 2017. It was a 10 marker. The question says, even 130 years of its publication, Woodrow Wilson's essay, The Study of Administration, continues to have a great relevance even today. So, practically, we answered this question during the final leg of our discussion on Wilson. The continued relevance of the core ideas of Wilson is the answer to this particular question. Okay, while things have changed, while public administration has grown in complexity, in scope, in character, its core ideals as Wilson identified it in his essay continue to endure. Okay, so the same fixed core with a vacillating periphery, but with regards to Wilson, we'll have to take this up. Okay. And after a very long time, the question comes in 2024. That is, politics administration dichotomy debate is still alive. Politics administration dichotomy debate is still alive. Some things that we have addressed just now, that the debate continues with regards to the politics and administration. So if you will see this, the focus on the dichotomy debate and the discussion that we have taken, the changing paradigms and the status of the debate, that will help you answer this particular question. Okay. Of lately, if we look at the past decade, Wilson has not been asked a lot. Okay. Just a few questions on Wilson have been asked from the first unit, right? Practically these two questions over the past 9 years. All right. So with this, we have come to the end of today's session. If you have any queries, please ask. All right. Then let's call it a class. Thank you.